You know, I won't lie. One of the biggest surprises of this year was the announcement of the Arcana cards. I remember reading these cards when they first came out, and I thought to myself, I think honestly, these cards are very criminally underrated right now. I don't think they'll be meta defining. I think they'll be a very roguish tier, if not maybe even tier 4, because I just think some of the things that the deck can do is really crazy. But I have found playing cards like the Horse Engine, and it is really good. Um, the utility of the new wave of support is really strong. Beyond. Do you know that Arcana 5 is not once per turn in its effect? So if you can get this out twice, which you can with the inbuilt Arcana reading, you can get this effect to resolve at least twice. Need spell and trap removal? Well, you don't need to run that, you can just run the Sun. You want to be able to OTK? You can do that with the Dark Ruler. I guess the thing I'm just trying to say is, I think Arcana is in a very interesting position right now. I wasn't really going to pay too much attention to this deck, but I am a huge GX fan, and I really wanted to give the deck a shot. Um, and I actually think for anyone who might like a more gimmicky side of Yu-Gi-Oh! And a deck that could actually keep up and do decently even at locals. I wouldn't say regionally. Maybe not. Depends on the format, depends on what does well, depends if Malice and Raziel really do take over as of making this. Um, but for a local level, I actually feel like this deck is pretty slept on. It can do some absolutely degenerate things, mainly turn skipping. You ever turn skip your opponent twice in a row? It's actually a unique feeling, frankly. You do it once and then you just do it again, and then you just go for OTK. I think this is a really interesting strategy. I'm actually really impressed about how they finally gave one of the worst archetypes in the game a pretty coherent strategy, and that's the World Turbo, or however they said it in Japan. Um, I don't know. I think this deck, if because not all the Arcana cards have been released yet. I think if they continue to release more and they're good, because frankly, every single card on here is the new stuff is really good. Every single one of them will be seeing play for anyone who does play the deck. Um, this deck can become stronger and stronger. That said, because this is a very gimmicky deck, if the world got banned tomorrow, this deck dies. Chaos Ruler is not enough to win a game, and the deck doesn't do anything outside that. Um, for a few tips, I guess, for anyone who is interested in playing it, you really want to maximize on the triple cards. I'm actually very tempted at playing 3 Thrust and 3 Talents, which I normally don't do, and I don't like. However, the ease and accessibility being able to proc these cards with your own Arcana cards are really strong. I also really think that the search cards that you can get off this are strong enough to justify, and your opponent's more or less going to hit you anyway because a lot of your deck is just mandatory effects because all the Arcana cards on summon are mandatory procs. 2-2 has been doing pretty nicely for me, but I wouldn't blame anyone if they wanted to play 3. I also think the Horse engine is far superior than the Kasha engine or Fiendsmith, which both come up. They do. This deck can be obviously seen as engine, but I really like the Horse in this. It just sets up so well. If you open the world, it doesn't become a brick because then you can just use spread to bring it out before summon 5 so you don't get nibbed, and you turn skip to your opponent, and then you can proceed to go again. But you want to play a lot of power cards. You can't play low with this deck. You must put everything forward with it, and where some credit is due, this is not a very easy deck to pilot. For one, obviously, you have the coin tossing effects, which completely conflict with this deck, and your ability to control which effect you get, and that does come up more often than you think, even with the power of Light Barrier. But decision making in this deck is very vital. This deck has outs. It has some flexibility, but it's on how you want to do it and when you resolve your effects. The amount of times I'll play this deck and I'll use or attempt to use Wave of Light to extend, but then I realized I got locked into something, which thanks to Konami for actually putting a legitimate restriction on something. Thank you. I can't complain. I guess it's the most balanced thing about these new cards. But you have options. I feel like that's just what the deck needs. Obviously you can play a very pure version. I try very hard to play. I play cards like the Emperor, which is actually my favorite, next to the Fiend, the Chariot, the Lovers, Dark Ruler, and so I really want to play the Arcana cards. I don't want it to just be a small engine. I really want this to be an Arcana deck, but at the moment, it has to really rely on a bunch of engine cards. In my opinion, if you want this to bring this to locals, um, Unicorn, Fenrir, MST, all these great cards, and of course the triple cards, which will proc because your opponent is going to want to interrupt you, and you're not always going to be able to use the Arcana 5 effect to guarantee your effects go off without a hitch or issue. This isn't a properly masked out deck. By the time these cards come out, I'm sure the list will look differently. I've just been actually having a lot of fun playing this because it's different. It certainly feels different. It's definitely toxic. Um, but this deck is quite surprising. It has a lot of unexpectedness to it, and the feeling where you're in a tight situation, you need to resolve something, and you have no way of controlling the coin flips, so you just go 50-50, and it goes heads, is such an exhilarating feeling. Um, I don't know. This deck isn't going to be competitive. I don't know how far the deck's going to go, but I do believe it is going to be slept on. And if you do play this at your locals, you're going to become the most hated person very quickly if you can properly turn skip your opponent. But honestly, if you let the Arcana player turn skip you, you probably uh, deserved to let that happen. I say evilly. Anyway, there's not much to it. If you are interested in playing Arcana, I hope some of these tips help. If when the deck does come out next year, we'll have to see the trajectory. I'm definitely going to build this IRL, so I'll let you know how this translates. I might be making a EDO Pro video on some duels and testing that I have with it, because I want to kind of just demonstrate some of the plays that you can do. And yeah, that's about it.